Hi, I'm Mike Palermo. I pastor Rayville United Methodist Church in Rayville. This is my beautiful wife, Julie.
Hi.
We just celebrated 39 years of marriage, and we're looking forward to 39 more. In fact, that's what we're here to talk about. Looking forward to those 39 more years in a different way. Um, we came full circle. I grew up in South Louisiana, met Julie at DH Homes, and um, and we got married, started a family here in New Orleans in Slidell, and moved to Denver, lived there for 18 years. And it was Hurricane Katrina that actually brought me back. And then eventually Julie followed me. But for that first year, I had left the world of high tech, started my own home maintenance and repair company, and she and I looked at each other and said, "Do we know what we're doing?"
And we didn't at the time.
Because we really didn't. But when Hurricane Katrina hit, it became obvious to both of us what God had been preparing me for. And we came home. We came back to Slidell. In fact, I went back to Aldersgate United Methodist Church, where
it all started.
Yeah, where it all started. And so one thing led to another. I really thought I was only going to be here in Slidell for just a few months, but after a year, Julie said, "Okay, something's got to give," and so we decided to relocate back home, closed the company, and we moved here, and it was at during my service at Aldersgate as chairman of the finance committee of all places that I really felt the call to do something more than repair homes and more than serve in a finance committee. And Gary Willis and Lane Cotton Wynn were my pastors at that time. And so I remember talking to Gary and feeling this call and feeling called specifically to missions and ministry. And he was telling me, explaining about being called was not being called up or above, but being called and set apart for. And I listened. I don't think I really understood everything that he was talking about. But we trusted our church, we trusted the process. And I began going through discernment. And then turns out Gary was the dean of License to Preach. And it was really interesting because I remember this story. I don't know if Gary would remember it quite this way, but as he was talking about the call to ministry and about praising God and offering the good news and helping people through their faith, I remember replying to him, "Oh, I didn't see myself preaching every Sunday," and yet that's exactly what we ended up doing. So Gary knew a lot more than I did, probably still does. but anyway, it was quite a journey. And as I said, we felt like I was being called to missions. And Julie had heard me say that numerous times. And so we went through the process, and I would come home and she'd say, well, and I'd say, well, we're on to the next step. And then the next step would come and she'd say, well, and I'd say, well, we're on to the next step. And finally we got to the last step. And so we knew that night, either we were going to get an indication as to whether I was recommended for appointment or not. So either way, a decision was going to be made. It was the last step. And remember that she had always heard me talking about missions and ministry. And so I came home and she looked at me and I said, they said they're going to recommend me for a church. And we just, I think we're in shock for a moment. And then she just came up close to me and she hugged me ever so tenderly, put her little head right here on my shoulder. And she said, you know, I love you. She says, I will support you, but I'm not going to China. so, so, so I said, well, honey, I don't think I am either, at least not yet. But anyway, it was.
They didn't send us quite that far.
it was to be. At times, it felt like. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it felt it was the beginning of a marvelous time of service that we never could have imagined. All the friends that we've made, people that we serve, the communities that we've lived in. It just truly has been remarkable and a blessing. I was finishing up course of study. In fact, had finished at Candler, and we were doing our spring reviews. And Katie Simpson came up to me and said, have you ever considered continuing as an associate member? And I don't know if she if she remembers my response. I'm sure she didn't know what to do, but I looked at her and I said, if it involves school, no, I'm not going. So, but she did put a bug in my ear, and I'm grateful for that, because it really was a turning point in my ministry, and really changed me and my understanding of service and servanthood. Becoming an associate member, it took me to a much deeper level, theologically, and spiritually. And for those who are local pastors, if you don't know what associate membership is, you really need to become familiar with that. It is powerful for you, but not only for you, but the churches that you will serve as you continue in the ministry. I know it really made a difference for us.
Yeah.
It was quite the work. Joseph Owatui was my mentor, and he survived. He's still around, and so if he survived me, he can survive anyone. But that was another interesting story. You begin answering these theological questions, doctrinal statements, and you go through it thinking, well, it's another tick in a box. It's another tick in a box, and you get all the answers, and you get finished, and you go, what did I just do? And Joseph and I sat down and said, do you want to take another run at this? And I said, I think I do. And it was that second time looking at this, that the weight of what I was doing really came upon me, and changed my outlook, that I was no longer interested in just getting a tick in a box, but but really immersing myself in the process and growing in faith, growing in ministry, growing in my theological understanding of who I was as a servant of the church. So yeah, it was some interesting times. This probably isn't necessarily a funny story, but for all of the local pastors out there, I'm sure that in the seminary students, I know that there are a number of my friends that just graduated from seminary. You can equate or identify with this. Um, at this point, I feel like I have written at least 3 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica. So, and I hope that was enough because the writing and all that went into that um, was tough, but boy, it was rewarding in the sense of appreciating the people that I was proclaiming the good news to, and they listened and responded, and that was the real blessing from God. Story would not be complete if we didn't take some time to thank all the people that really affected our journey. It began with John and Marie Williams, who were our pastors when I returned back to Aldersgate after Hurricane Katrina. And they really laid the groundwork for me hearing the call. And of course, Gary and Lane being there and just nurturing me through this and helping me to understand is kind of funny that I didn't know this at the time, but Tiffany Lyon had already started the process of answering the call of ministry, and we both were attending Aldersgate. In fact, we were attending the same Sunday school class and didn't know that about each other, and went to some discernment. We went to license to preach together, and so thank you, Gary. Thank you, Lane, for helping open the doors. And RL, as I know her, as many of us know her, Ramona Lynn, um, she was my district superintendent at the time, and guided me into and through the discernment process. And we've kind of had that connection all through my ministry. She actually was on my review team as I was going through um, associate member uh, work as I was doing that. And so thank you, RL, for all that you did and for all that you continue to do in our friendship, all through ministry. One of the things that it was always surprising to me was having a mentor, and I had two. Byron Putnam was my mentor all through my time um, through course of study um, at Candler, and was someone that helped me through my early years in serving in the church. I certainly had some challenges. You get a phone call from a member whose parent was the victim of a crime and dies, and is calling you sobbing, and it's like all of a sudden you realize the full weight of ministry on your shoulders. And I didn't know much, but I knew to call Byron, and he always he always managed to counsel me and guide me through those calls, and I'll be eternally grateful for his guidance and his counselor. He was a great listener. He was a great coach. Um, so thank you, Lauren. And Joseph Owatwi, I know, if you know Joseph, he is such a quiet, um, soft-spoken, gentle giant of a servant. Um, and sometimes is hard to understand when he gets excited. I always get accused of mumbling my words when I get excited. I remember my brother-in-law and sister-in-law came and helped us, and I was disconnecting a compressor, and I said, "Come here," and she had no idea what I said, and I disconnected that hose, and I thought I was going to have a new door in one of my walls. She took off like she was shot out of a cannon. So Joseph was just wonderful. Um, his his theological understanding opened all kinds of doors and thought that I know I would never have considered. So thank you, Joseph, and all that you did and guiding me through, and your perseverance not to give up, because I'm sure you wanted to. but but it all worked out. And all of these people that I'm thanking guided me and kept me going, kept me on the right path. Um, I talked about Ramona Lynn was my district superintendent when I started. Hadley Edwards was my district superintendent through several appointments, and as someone I count as friend even today. We got to do a lot in his work with Spirit Church in New Orleans. Even our kids got involved. Yep. At a big fair, a block party that we had. Katie was dressed up as a stormtrooper, taking pictures with all the kids, and Amanda and Julie were there serving refreshments, and
church.
And a whole church from Centenary Church from Franklinton got involved as well. Of all the things, I was working with Hadley along with a whole lot of other folks. And of all things, I came down with shingles and couldn't even be there. So I missed out. I missed out on the whole thing. But um, certainly Katie Simpson for pointing me in the right direction and pursuing associate membership. And Tom Dahl, um, my district superintendent when I was serving in central Louisiana. Um, his counsel helped me mature as a pastor. Um, I had a few rough spots, let's say, and he guided me and counseled me and reached me in a very important way that helped me continue to grow. So thank you, Tom, and of course, Wyver Price is my district superintendent. When we announced to retire, not I suppose the best counsel he could have given me was as we were working on this decision to retire. I was very anxious about my congregation and how to approach them. And he just simply said, Mike, he said, you trust your congregation, they trust you. Take them on the journey with you and your wife. Just let them be a part of that process as you go through that, whatever you decide. And we did it. And thank you, Wyver, for that counsel, because it really opened more doors then I was afraid it might close. So thanks so much. Well, those are the folks that have meant a lot to us and guided us through all of it to this point. But at this point, like many of the clergy that I've listened to that have retired, I may be retiring from full-time appointment, but I will continue to serve the church in any way that I'm called on to do that. And so um, we say thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to hear God's call. Thanks for making this journey together.
Thanks for sending us into different places we've never been,
Yeah.
which was interesting and very enlightening. Just it was a good thing.
Well, it certainly was a challenge, but I suppose the one person I need to thank the most was my wife, even though she wasn't going to follow me to China. Um, she has stuck with me and guided me. She's been my toughest critic, my greatest fan, um, and my my source of encouragement when I felt sometimes, as I think we all do, at one time or another, you just begin to wonder: are you doing the right things? Are you saying the right things? And it gets to be a lonely place sometimes. And but she never gave up. She always gave me a hug when I needed it, and kept me going. So thanks. Thank you.